Hi again, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. I'm here with an update video now on my method of doing hardwood cuttings of roses, but this is the soilless technique, or at least the first step of it is soilless, where I try to callus the roses in these inner containers nested in this outer container with high humidity held around them. If you don't understand or want to know more about that method, please go back to the previous video where I explain it in full. This video here, I'm taking about 6 weeks after the first video to show you what callusing has occurred on these varieties here that I've pulled out and to discuss some of the successes and failures of the method. So this is my second time through this method. The first time I did it was last summer. I kept them in my flower cooler and held the temperatures down below 15 degrees Celsius, and it worked pretty good. This time here, I did it just in the downstairs basement room, and I did it over winter, so the temperatures were a little bit lower. It probably averages down here at about 10 degrees Celsius on average, which is fine for this method. It's widely adaptable, but what I have noticed is that it's going slower this time. So 6 weeks later, and I would say 50 or 60% of all of the cuttings that are in that box have done almost nothing, just very light callusing. Let me show you here. So I'll see if I can get these to autofocus. There you go. You can see across the bottoms there that there's very little callusing. There's maybe a little ring of it around the bottom edge, but not all that much. And this is indicative of the condition of the majority, or the near majority, of everything that's in the bin right now. But I do want to show you some of the ones that have done well and calloused strongly so far, and how I make the decisions about how to proceed with these next. Having opened these up now, from left to right, that is on the far left, Blanc Double to Goubert. The second one is Winnipeg Parks. Third one over is Topaz Jewel, just a wickedly thorny rugosa. And on the far right, that's America. And I want to show you how each of these turned out. I'm going to try to get the camera to autofocus on the bottoms of these, but if I can't, then I'll just insert some pictures so that I can show you how the callusing looks. So this one here, if you could see, has had a strong callusing reaction. It's actually bursting out through the bottom all the way around the base of the cutting. So I'm going to say that Blanc Double to Goubert is good for this method, and it's, I would say with this level of callusing, is pretty much a sure bet. The second one here, and again, just a good, strong callusing reaction on the bottom of Winnipeg Parks. It hasn't formed any roots yet, but it's got good callusing across the bottom there. Now I do want to show you, while I got you here, that one of these did not do so well. And again, I may have to insert a picture here, but what I'm looking at is at the bottom of this one here, there's a dark color. And that dark color indicates that it's begun to rot. Now this is actually, out of everything that's inside the box there, and I must have 30 or 40 of the inner bins inside the outer box, but this is the only cutting I found that was beginning to rot. Everything else was either just stable with no callus or very little callus, or had started to callus up pretty good so far. This is the third one I want to show you, and that again is Topaz Jewel. And once again, a really good, strong callusing reaction across the bottom edge of those cuttings. Now finally, I wanted to show you this one here, which has not begun to callus, but you can see across the top edge of these cuttings that it started to shoot. Now that's a bit of a problem. Now they're not so far advanced yet that I'm going to give up on these cuttings, but if the shoots at the top here develop before the roots at the bottom, my experience has been that these cuttings will not succeed. So I'm kind of hoping that the bottoms of these begin to callus soon and I can transition them. Now that brings up the next question. when do you make the decision to transition? And like I say, it depends on the level of callousing. So with something with this level of callousing here, I would feel comfortable putting that into a pot right now, and I will do that at the end of this video, is just go ahead and pot it. But I have to say that even though it looks like I've gotten like 90-95% callousing out of this method so far, that this next stage where you try to transition them from strongly calloused into rooting and ready to sell is where I see most of my losses. So last year when I did this, I still experienced somewhere around 30% losses. It's almost like they got held in this condition during the time they were in the box, but as soon as I put them in soil, roughly 2 to 3 weeks later, even though they had calloused well across the bottom end, then I saw losses. And I would see them start to blacken from the bottom up and rot. So Topaz Jewel was the best calloused of all the varieties that I had here. So I'm going to give them a try potting them on into my 9 centimeter size here. A couple of notes about that. The soil I'm using is just a sterile, light peat-based mix. Has no fertilizer in it at all. I don't want to introduce fertilizer at this point. I also intend to run it a bit on the dry side. So I will not be running this under mist. I'm just going to keep it in a relatively shaded spot, cool, probably out of my greenhouse, and leave it in a sort of a dryish state. I think the reason I want to go with that is having held so well in this situation here, fully dry but in high humidity, I'm wondering if maybe the failures I'm experiencing in transition have something to do with the fact that they're now going into a moist soil. So if I can keep that a bit on the dry side, I may be able to stave off some of that rot that happens after the transition. The other thing I want to try to do this time, and this is just another adjustment that I'm attempting on the method, is I understand that getting to callousing requires the plant to have a certain amount of rooting hormone or growth regulator that gets it to that stage. The thing that determines rooting is actually a higher level of that same hormone. So what I'm going to do before I stick them is I'm going to stick them again, or dust them one more time with a fresh dusting of the rooting powder, and then just stick them in. And that's it. That's the whole method. So what I'll be doing is I'll be keeping track of this, and I'll do a final update video when the majority of these have moved over to that callousing or rooting stage, and when I'm going to put most of them into pots. Okay, just a quick peek on the inside of the box here. You can see that I filled it up as high as I could without hitting the rim, and also depending on the number of cuttings that I had out of the garden. But actually no problem stacking them as high and as deep as you can go. And as for how I maintained the moisture, I probably have checked on this twice during the time that it was held over the past 6 weeks. And you can see that even now, there's moisture on the inside of this. So I may have misted it once over the 6 weeks, but once this is sealed, it really does hold its own moisture. So you don't have to open it all the time to just check if the moisture is there. It holds it pretty good. All right, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave those below the video, and I'll be back with an update on this as the rest of the ones in the box there tend to start to callus.